You know, the housing market in Canada has been shaky for years. Everyone kept saying it was a ticking time bomb. Politicians pretended it was under control. Bankers kept telling us not to worry. Meanwhile, families across the country were already being priced out of owning a home. And now, the truth has exploded in the ugliest way possible. A $10 million fraud scandal has blown the whole thing wide open, freezing hundreds of millions in real estate deals, leaving families stranded, and sending a shockwave straight into the heart of Ottawa. Let's talk about what really happened. In East Toronto, realtor Tut Gucci had her face plastered on billboards. She was doing her job, hustling for clients, selling homes, moving deals forward. But now, she's staring down at chaos she never saw coming, alongside 400 other realtors. She woke up one day to discover she couldn't access money that wasn't just her livelihood, it was her client's lifeline. Deposits, commissions, savings for homes, all gone. Across her team alone, almost $1 million evaporated. Where was all that money sitting? In the trust account of a major brokerage called iPro Realty. On paper, that trust account is supposed to be untouchable. It's supposed to be the safest place in the world for deposits, money for down payments, commissions waiting for deals to close, all protected under regulation. But guess what? That account is now frozen. Realtors can't get paid. Families can't close on homes. And people who thought they had their dream within reach are watching it dissolve into dust. So how did this happen? According to an investigation by the Real Estate Council of Ontario, better known as RECO, the co-founders of iPro, Roy Alves and Fideli Kawuchi, illegally transferred more than $5 million out of the brokerage's trust account. $10.5 million. That's not a rounding error. That's not a clerical mistake. That's theft. Plain and simple. And RECO itself admits this is the largest breach they've ever seen. You would think that in a case like this, the hammer would come down hard. Jail time, massive fines, criminal charges. But no, Alves and Kawuchi were disciplined, sure, but they weren't charged. They weren't fined. They weren't paraded out as a warning to anyone else thinking of tampering with trust accounts. Instead, the registrar at the time, Joe Richard, seemed content to let the whole thing slide. That's the kind of protection consumers are getting in Canada, and it gets worse. While this scandal was brewing, while millions were being siphoned out of the account, business kept booming. Over $720 million in new real estate transactions flowed through iPro. $720 million. Deposits, down payments, all going into a system that was already compromised. Think about that. Families handing over their life savings. Realtors working deal after deal. And the very structure that's supposed to protect that money was rotting from the inside. This isn't just about one brokerage. This is about the credibility of Canada's entire housing market. For years, critics have warned that the system is a house of cards. Prices kept climbing out of reach, fueled by speculation, fueled by greed, fueled by government incompetence. And when regulators were supposed to be standing guard, they were asleep at the wheel. Now the bomb has gone off, and standing in the middle of this mess is Mark Carney. Remember Carney, the guy the establishment swore was the adult in the room. Former banker, the so-called financial genius who was supposed to be the one steady hand in a storm. He's the one Ottawa has leaned on to sell Canadians this fantasy that the system is stable. But now, with families panicking and investors running for cover, Carney is nowhere to be found. When he does show his face, it's not to take responsibility, it's to throw tantrums, lash out at critics, and dodge accountability. That's the leadership Canada is left with. Let's be clear, this was supposed to be impossible. Brokerages are required by law to keep client money in separate trust accounts, subject to audits and oversight. The entire point of those accounts is to prevent exactly this scenario. It's the kind of airtight safeguard you tell people about when you're asking them to hand over their savings, and yet $10.5 million walked right out the door. No alarms went off. No regulators stepped in. No one stopped it. How? That's the multi-million-dollar question Canadians are asking right now. Because this wasn't a one-day mistake. This wasn't an overnight slip. This was months, maybe years of systematic failures. Oversight that wasn't happening. Rules that weren't enforced. A watchdog that, in reality, was more of a lapdog. And when the news finally hit the headlines, RECO's response was pathetic. Suspend iPro's license, freeze the accounts, issue a press release saying they're reviewing the situation. That doesn't help families who can't close on homes. That doesn't help realtors staring at unpaid bills. That doesn't help anyone who's now effectively homeless, because their deposit has vanished into thin air. And what about Carney's response? Instead of answering why his regulators failed, instead of showing accountability, he turned the blame onto everyone else. He pointed fingers at speculators, at agents, even at the public, for panicking, as if the problem isn't the fraud, but Canadians daring to be outraged about it. That's insulting. That's cowardly, and it's exactly why people are losing faith in leadership. The anger is boiling over. Realtors are warning that if funds aren't released soon, they'll protest directly at RECO's offices. Families are demanding answers. Investors are looking at Canada and shaking their heads. And Carney is hiding behind closed doors, reportedly lashing out at ministers and aides, but offering nothing to the public but excuses. What does this mean for ordinary Canadians? It means chaos, deals collapsing mid-closing, mortgages hanging in limbo, realtors unable to pay their rent, families who thought they were about to move into their first home now facing homelessness. It means trust, once lost, won't come back easily, if at all. And it means the housing market, already stretched to the breaking point, is now facing a crisis of confidence on top of everything else. This is not just another scandal. This is proof that the system itself is broken. And if Ottawa can't fix it, then Canada's housing market isn't just unstable, it's dangerous. When scandals like this hit, there's usually one question on everyone's mind. Who failed? And in this case, the list is long. You have iPro Realty, a major brokerage trusted by thousands, siphoning off millions. You have regulators like RECO, asleep at the wheel, pretending their job is to rubber stamp licenses rather than protect consumers. And at the top of it all, you have Ottawa, with Mark Carney presiding over a system that looks less like a modern economy and more like a rigged casino. What makes people furious is that this was preventable. Oversight rules weren't optional. They weren't hidden. Everyone knew that trust accounts had to be separated, monitored, and audited. Yet somehow, more than $10 million disappeared. You can't chalk that up to bad luck. This is failure, plain and simple. And Canadians are left holding the bag. Families are the ones living the nightmare. Think about the chaos on the ground. People signed contracts, paid deposits, planned moves. They were supposed to be stepping into their new homes. Now, instead, they're told the money's gone, the deals are frozen, and there's no timeline for when or if it will be resolved. Imagine being told after years of saving that your down payment has been hijacked. And the regulator's response is, we're reviewing the situation. That's the kind of insult that cuts deep. Realtors are caught in the middle. These are not big banks or hedge fund managers. These are ordinary Canadians working off commission. They only get paid when deals close. And now, with hundreds of millions in transactions frozen, they're stuck, rent due, mortgages due, bills piling up, and no paycheck in sight. Some are openly saying they might not be able to make rent this month. Others are threatening to march straight to RECO's offices and demand answers in person. This isn't just financial stress, it's livelihoods collapsing overnight. And then there's the political fallout. For Carney, this is nothing short of catastrophic. He's already juggling trade disputes, shouting matches with Washington, and defense headaches. Add to that a housing scandal where families are losing their savings, and the picture is clear. He's losing control. Canadians are noticing. They see empty liquor store shelves after the Jack Daniels fiasco. They see tariffs eating into cross-border trade. And now they see the housing market, the one thing families counted on, crumbling under fraud and mismanagement. This is where frustration boils over. Because scandals happen, yes, but this was supposed to be impossible. And when a government can't guarantee even the basics, like protecting people's deposits in a regulated trust account, then what exactly is the government doing? Carney, instead of admitting failure, chose a different route. He deflected. He blamed speculators. He blamed reckless agents. And he even blamed Canadians themselves for panicking, as if people losing their homes should just sit quietly and accept it. That's not leadership, that's gaslighting. And it's insulting to every single Canadian who has played by the rules, saved their money, trusted the system, and now finds themselves betrayed behind the scenes. Reports say Carney is furious. Ministers describe him as shouting, lashing out, demanding answers. But rage behind closed doors doesn't put money back into families' accounts. It doesn't restore trust. It doesn't fix the fact that regulators failed at their one job. Canadians don't need a prime minister throwing tantrums. They need a leader taking responsibility, and right now, that's not what they're getting. RECO, for its part, scrambled to act once the scandal went public. They suspended iPro's license. They froze accounts. They hired a law firm to conduct an audit. Too little, too late. By then, the damage was already done. And let's be honest, hiring a law firm after the money has already vanished doesn't inspire confidence. It's a PR move, not a solution. Families don't care about some expensive audit. They want their money back. They want their homes. They want accountability. Late Friday, Ontario's housing minister, Steve Crawford, weighed in. He said if the audit doesn't satisfy him, He'll consider appointing an administrator to take control of RICO. That's how bad it's gotten. The watchdog meant to protect consumers might itself need to be put under adult supervision. Think about the absurdity of that. Regulators regulating regulators. That's the circle of dysfunction Canada has sunk into. Realtors like Naz Moani have already gone public with their losses. She has 150 zeros are going frozen. She's been told to file an insurance claim. Imagine telling someone their six-figure savings is gone. And the best advice is maybe your insurance will cover it. That's not protection. That's failure on every level. Other realtors like Tut Gucci are demanding immediate action. She's calling for a trustee to step in, take over the frozen funds, and start paying people back now. Because people can't wait months or years for some audit to wrap up. They have mortgages today, they have bills today, and the clock is ticking. Gucci herself has already walked away from iPro. She's joined Remax, and she's not alone. Realtors are fleeing, clients are running, and the brokerage's reputation is toast. Once trust is gone, there's no rebuilding it. The damage is permanent. And the truth is, this scandal is now about more than real estate. It's about the image of Canada itself. To ordinary Canadians, it looks like the government has lost control of trade, of defense, and now of the housing market. South of the border, the contrast couldn't be sharper. In the United States, the property market is booming, investors are confident, deals are moving, and Donald Trump, never one to miss an opportunity, is already pointing to Canada's mess as proof of American strength. Trump raises a glass, toasts the surging market, and says, "Look at Canada. They can't even protect their own housing system." And he's not wrong. While Washington celebrates, Ottawa scrambles, and Carney looks weaker by the day. For Canadians, this isn't just about money. It's about humiliation. Internationally, investors are watching this scandal spread in New York, in London, in Hong Kong. Analysts are recalculating the risk of putting money into Canadian real estate. What was once considered rock solid is now seen as shaky. Trust that took decades to build is collapsing overnight. And once global confidence is lost, it's almost impossible to get back. This scandal started with 10 million stolen dollars, but it's spiraling into something much bigger, a crisis of credibility for the entire country. The fallout from this scandal is spreading wider every single day. What started as a brokerage fraud in Ontario has become a national symbol of failure, and it's shaking confidence across the entire housing market. And make no mistake, this isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. This is about families losing homes, realtors losing livelihoods, and Canadians losing faith in the institutions that are supposed to protect them. Think about what this means for the housing market as a whole. Deals worth $700 million are frozen. Realtors can't access commissions. Families can't close on homes. Some can't even pay their mortgages because the deposits they handed over in good faith are locked away in a tainted trust account. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's financial ruin for ordinary people. And yet, the official response has been slow, weak, and full of excuses. RECO says they're conducting an audit. Ottawa says they're reviewing the situation. Ontario says they might step in if they're not satisfied. Meanwhile, people are stuck waiting for an answer, waiting for relief, waiting for leadership that doesn't seem to be coming. The regulators are pretending that time is on their side, but time is the one thing families don't have. Rent is due now. Mortgages are due now. Kids need a place to live now. And when the government tries to spin this as panic, when Carney tells Canadians the real problem isn't fraud, but overreaction, that's when the outrage boils over. Because this isn't panic, it's betrayal. People trusted the system, did everything right, and were failed at every level. The international spotlight only makes it worse. In the United States, the housing market is thriving. Investors are confident, deals are closing, and Trump, of course, is seizing the moment. He points to Canada's frozen deposits and failed oversight as proof that Ottawa can't manage its own affairs. For him, it's a perfect talking point. American strength contrasted against Canadian incompetence, and while he celebrates, Canadians are left humiliated. The contrast is devastating. In Washington, Trump raises a glass to surging markets. In Ottawa, Carney is stuck explaining how $10 million vanished from a supposedly protected trust account. In New York, London, and Hong Kong, analysts are warning investors to think twice before putting money into Canadian real estate. The message is clear. Canada can't be trusted, and that's the true cost of this scandal. Not just the money stolen, not just the deals frozen, but the credibility lost. Once investors see Canada as unstable, it changes everything. The housing market depends on confidence that deposits are safe, that regulators are alert, that contracts will be honored. Without that, the system collapses, and that collapse is now visible for the world to see Even within Canada, provinces are starting to question Ottawa's ability to handle the crisis. Ontario's minister has already warned he may take control of Rexo if the audit doesn't satisfy him. Other provinces are watching closely, asking if their own housing markets are safe or if the same rot runs through the entire system. This is creating a clash between federal and provincial governments at the worst possible time. At a moment when stability is desperately needed, Canada is showing division and dysfunction. Realtors on the ground aren't waiting around for politicians to figure it out. Some are calling for immediate action, demanding that a trustee step in to manage the funds and start paying people back now. Others are threatening protests at RECO offices if nothing changes soon. And can you blame them? How long are people supposed to wait while bureaucrats shuffle papers and point fingers? The human cost is what makes this scandal unforgivable. It's not just about market confidence or political embarrassment. It's about real families who may now lose their homes, about realtors who may be forced out of business, about ordinary Canadians whose faith in the system has been shattered. When people work hard, save their money, follow the rules, and still get burned because the very institutions meant to protect them failed, that's when anger turns into rage. And Carney, he may still have the title of Prime Minister, but Canadians are starting to wonder if he's really in control of anything at all. Trade is collapsing, defense is in disarray, and now the housing market, the core of Canadian family life, is in chaos. His tantrums behind closed doors don't inspire confidence. His finger pointing doesn't solve problems. And his dismissive attitude toward public outrage only deepens the crisis. This scandal will be remembered not just for the money lost, but for what it revealed. A system built on illusions, regulators who don't regulate, and leaders who can't lead. For years, critics warned that Canada's housing market was a bubble waiting to burst. Now the burst has happened, and it's uglier than anyone imagined. The lesson is clear. Without accountability, without real oversight, without leadership willing to take responsibility, Canada's housing market isn't a safe bet, it's a gamble. And right now, it looks like a losing one. So where does this leave Canadians? Stuck between a government that won't act, regulators that can't protect them, and an international community that no longer sees Canada as reliable. That's not stability. That's not security. That's a national embarrassment. And it all comes down to this. Canadians are asking themselves a question they never thought they'd ask. If the government can't protect their savings, can't protect their homes, and can't even protect the basic trust accounts that hold deposits, then what exactly is left to protect? That's not just a scandal. That's a crisis of confidence in the very idea of Canada's leadership. And it's going to haunt this country long after the audits are done, long after the protests are over, and long after the headlines move on, because once trust is broken, there is no going back.